I was standing in our tiny kitchen, a pregnancy test in one hand and a dinner spoon in the other, when I heard the front door unlock. My heart was racing so fast I could barely breathe. After 3 years together, I was finally going to tell Siwoo the news that would change everything. I had planned this moment perfectly. His favorite meal, candles on the table, soft music playing. But when he walked through that door, the look on his face told me this wasn't going to be the magical evening I'd imagined. His eyes were distant, cold even. He didn't kiss me like he usually did. He just stood there, luggage in his hand that I hadn't seen him pack that morning. And then he said the words that shattered my entire world into a million pieces. "I'm Ha-jun, and I need to tell you about the day my life completely fell apart." It was a Tuesday evening in late spring, and I'd spent the entire day in a daze of excitement and terror. That morning, I'd finally worked up the courage to visit the doctor about the constant nausea that had been plaguing me for weeks. I thought maybe I had food poisoning or stress from work, but the truth was so much bigger than that. The doctor had smiled warmly when she gave me the news. "Congratulations, Ha-jun, you're pregnant, and from the looks of these scans, you're having twins." I remember just staring at her, unable to process the words. Twins. 2 babies. Siwoo's and mine. We'd been together for 3 wonderful years, living in our small but cozy apartment in the heart of Seoul. He was a photographer with dreams of opening his own studio someday, and I worked as a graphic designer at a mid-sized advertising company. We weren't rich, but we were happy. At least, I thought we were. I left the doctor's office with trembling hands and immediately started planning how to tell him. I stopped by the market and bought all the ingredients for japchae, his absolute favorite dish. I even splurged on expensive beef, the kind we usually only bought for special occasions. I purchased a small pair of baby shoes and wrapped them in tissue paper, planning to hide them in his bowl as a surprise. Everything was going to be perfect. But as I stood there in our kitchen that evening, hearing his key turn in the lock, something felt wrong. Call it instinct or just the way the air seemed to shift, but I knew something bad was coming. When Siwoo walked in, he wasn't smiling. His handsome face looked tired, maybe even guilty. He was carrying a duffel bag I recognized from our closet, one he used when he traveled for photography jobs. "Ha-jun, we need to talk," he said quietly, not even looking at the elaborate dinner I'd prepared. My stomach dropped. Those 4 words have never meant anything good in the history of relationships. I set down the spoon I was holding, suddenly feeling dizzy. "What's wrong? Did something happen at work?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my insides were churning. I instinctively put my hand over my stomach, where our babies were growing, though I didn't even know I was doing it. Siwoo finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Detachment, like he was already somewhere else mentally. "I met someone," he said simply, "at a photo shoot last week. His name is Do-hyun. He's a model." The world started spinning. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "You met someone? What does that mean, Siwoo? We're together. We've been together for 3 years. We live together. My voice was rising, panic setting in. He cut me off with a sharp gesture. "I know all that, Ha-jun, but Do-hyun is different. He's beautiful, like really beautiful, the kind of person who stops traffic. He's exciting and glamorous, and being with him makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in a long time." Each word was like a knife to my heart. I felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes, but I forced them back. "So comfortable and safe are bad things now? I thought that's what love was supposed to be. I thought we were building a life together, Siwoo. I almost told him about the babies right then. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but something stopped me. Pride, maybe, or hurt, or the sudden realization that this man standing in front of me wasn't the person I thought I knew. Siwoo picked up his duffel bag and slung it over his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Ha-jun. I really am, but I need to do this.
I need to see where things go with Do-yeon. You deserve someone who looks at you the way I look at him, someone who thinks you're enough exactly as you are. The irony of those words would have been funny if they weren't so devastating. "Where will you go?" I asked numbly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do-yeon has a penthouse in Gangnam. I'm moving in with him tonight." Of course he was. Do-yeon had a penthouse. I had a tiny apartment with a leaky faucet and walls so thin you could hear the neighbors sneeze. Siwoo walked toward the door, and I just stood there watching him leave. I should have screamed or thrown something or told him about the babies, but I couldn't. I was frozen, watching the last 3 years of my life walk out the door without looking back. He paused at the threshold and turned around one last time. "Take care of yourself, Ha-jun. You're a good person. You'll find someone better." And then he was gone. I don't know how long I stood there in that kitchen, staring at the closed door. The japchae I'd cooked with so much love was getting cold on the stove. The candles had burned halfway down, and inside me 2 tiny lives were growing, completely unaware that their father had just walked away before even knowing they existed. Eventually, I sank down onto the kitchen floor and let myself cry. I cried for the relationship I'd lost, for the future I'd imagined, for the family that would never be. I cried until I had no tears left, and then I just sat there in the silence, one hand on my stomach, whispering to the babies I was carrying. "It's going to be okay. I don't know how, but it's going to be okay. I promise you both." The next morning, I woke up on the couch where I'd eventually dragged myself to lie down. My eyes were swollen, my head was pounding, and for a blissful moment, I forgot what had happened. Then reality came crashing back, and I felt sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, though I couldn't tell if it was morning sickness or heartbreak. I called in sick to work, which I never did. My boss sounded annoyed but told me to feel better. I spent the day wandering around the apartment like a ghost, looking at all the traces of Siwoo that remained, his favorite coffee mug in the cabinet, the photos of us on the walls, his slippers by the door that he'd forgotten to take. Each item felt like another small wound. By evening, I knew I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. So I called the one person who'd always been there for me, my childhood best friend, Unwoo. We'd known each other since we were kids, growing up in the same neighborhood, going to the same schools. He'd been at my side through every major moment of my life, always steady and dependable. "Unwoo, can you come over?" I asked when he answered, and my voice must have sounded as broken as I felt, because he immediately said yes. He arrived 20 minutes later, letting himself in with the spare key I'd given him years ago. When he saw me sitting on the couch, still in the same clothes from yesterday, eyes red and puffy, he didn't ask questions. He just sat down next to me and pulled me into a hug. And I broke down all over again, sobbing into his shoulder while he held me and stroked my hair. "Siwoo left me," I finally managed to say between sobs. "He left me for someone prettier, someone more exciting, someone better." His body tensed with anger. "That absolute fool," he said quietly, his voice tight with controlled rage. "Ha-jun, you are the kindest, most wonderful person I know. How could he possibly think anyone is better than you?" "Because I'm ordinary," I said bitterly. "I'm just a regular person with a regular job and a regular face. I'm not a model, I don't have rich parents or glamorous connections. I'm just me, and apparently that's not enough." Unwoo pulled back and looked at me with an intensity I'd rarely seen in his gentle eyes. "You are enough, Ha-jun. You are more than enough. Siwoo is the one who's not enough. He doesn't deserve you." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are, someone who would never leave you for anything or anyone." Something in his voice made me look at him more closely, but before I could analyze it, another wave of nausea hit me. I jumped up and ran to the bathroom again. Unwoo followed, holding my hair back while I was sick, getting me water, being the friend he'd always been. When I came back to the couch, pale and shaky, he looked at me with concern. "Ha-jun, have you been sick like this a lot? Maybe you should see a doctor." And that's when I knew I had to tell him. I couldn't carry the secret alone. I already did, I said quietly. Yesterday morning. That's actually why I made that special dinner for Siwoo. I was going to tell him. I took a deep breath. I'm pregnant, Unwoo, with twins, and Siwoo doesn't know. He left before I could tell him. The expression on Unwoo's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, more shock, then something that looked almost like pain, and finally a fierce protectiveness. You're having babies? Siwoo's babies? And he left you? His voice was rising with each question. I nodded miserably. I almost told him. The words were right there. But when he said all those things about Do-hyun being better, about me being too ordinary, I just couldn't. My pride wouldn't let me. And now I don't know what to do. I can't raise twins alone, Unwoo. I barely make enough money to support myself. Unwoo took my hands in his, looking directly into my eyes with an expression so serious it almost scared me. You're not alone, Ha-jun. You're never alone. I'm here, and I'm gonna help you, okay? Whatever you need, I'm here.
But Unwoo, this is a huge responsibility. These aren't your babies. You don't have to... He cut me off firmly. I don't care whose biological children they are. You're my best friend, and I'm not going to let you go through this alone. Besides, those babies are lucky. They're going to have the most loving, caring parent in the world. Over the next few weeks, Unwoo became my lifeline. He helped me research what to expect during pregnancy. He came with me to doctor's appointments, holding my hand while we listened to 2 tiny heartbeats on the ultrasound monitor. He helped me figure out my finances and make a budget for when the babies arrived. He was there for every moment of morning sickness, every worry, every tear. As my pregnancy progressed, my body started changing in ways I wasn't prepared for. I had to start buying looser clothes to hide my growing stomach. At work, I became paranoid that people would notice, especially because my boss was the kind of person who wouldn't be understanding about this situation. I was constantly exhausted, struggling to keep up with my design projects while dealing with the physical toll of carrying twins. Meanwhile, through mutual friends and social media, I couldn't help but see glimpses of Siwoo's new life with Do-hyun. They were everywhere, at gallery openings, fancy restaurants, exclusive parties. Do-hyun really was breathtakingly beautiful in a way that made my chest ache with inadequacy. His face was perfectly symmetrical, his style was impeccable, and he photographed like a dream. Siwoo looked happy in the pictures, or at least he was smiling. They made such a stunning couple that it hurt to look at them. I tried to block them on everything, but somehow information still got through. A mutual friend would mention seeing them somewhere. A tagged photo would pop up before I could prevent it. Each time felt like reopening a wound that hadn't quite healed. One particularly bad day, about 4 months into my pregnancy, I made the mistake of looking at Do-hyun's social media. He'd posted a photo of an expensive watch Siwoo had apparently bought him, with a caption about being spoiled by the best boyfriend ever. The watch probably cost more than I made in 3 months. I sat there staring at that post, one hand on my growing belly, and felt a toxic mix of jealousy, anger, and sadness. Unwoo found me crying over my phone that evening. He took it away gently and sat down next to me. You have to stop torturing yourself like this, Ha-jun. What Siwoo is doing with his life isn't your concern anymore. But what if I made a mistake not telling him? I asked desperately. What if these babies deserve to know their father? What if I'm being selfish? Unwoo's jaw tightened. Siwoo made his choice when he walked that door without looking back. He chose his own happiness over you. You don't owe him anything, least of all information about children he doesn't even know exist. These babies will be loved and cared for. That's what matters. As the months continued to pass, my situation at work became untenable. My boss called me into his office one day when I was about 6 months along. I'd been doing everything I could to hide my pregnancy, wearing baggy clothes and working extra hard to prove I wasn't slacking, but apparently it wasn't enough. Ha-jun, I'm going to be direct with you, my boss said.
his tone making it clear this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. "Your work quality has been declining. You're taking too many sick days, and frankly, you look exhausted all the time. I need employees who can give 100%. I think it would be best if you resigned." I felt panic rising in my throat. I needed this job. I needed the health insurance, the steady paycheck, the stability. "Sir, I promise I can do better. I've just been dealing with some health issues, but they're under control now. Please, I really need this job." He shook his head. "I've made my decision. You can resign, which will look better on your record, or I can terminate you. Your choice." I resigned. What else could I do? I cleaned out my desk that same day, trying not to cry as I packed up 3 years' worth of work into a cardboard box. My coworkers gave me sympathetic looks, but didn't say much. In this economy, everyone was afraid of being next. That night, I had a complete breakdown. Unwoo came over to find me surrounded by job listings, calculator in hand, bills spread across the coffee table. The math wasn't adding up. Without my salary, I couldn't afford the apartment, couldn't pay for the medical expenses that were piling up, couldn't buy the things I'd need for 2 babies. "I can't do this," I said, my voice hollow with defeat. "I can't afford to have these babies, Unwoo. Maybe I should tell Siwoo after all. Maybe he deserves to know so he can help financially at least." Unwoo's jaw tightened. "Look at me, Ha-jun." When he met my eyes, he continued firmly, "You can do this. We can do this. I've been looking for a bigger apartment anyway. Why don't we move in together? We can split the rent, and I'll be there to help when the babies come. It makes practical sense." "Unwoo, you can't ask me to do that. You have your own life." "You're not asking. I'm offering. Ha-jun, let me help you. Please." Something in his voice, in his eyes, made me wonder if there was more to his offer than just friendship. But I was too tired, too scared, too overwhelmed to analyze it. I just nodded and let him hold me while I cried for what felt like the millionth time since Siwoo had left. We found a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a less expensive neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and safe, with good schools nearby for when the boys got older.
Yes, boys, I'd found out at my last ultrasound that I was having twin sons. Unwoo had been there for that appointment too, squeezing my hand when the technician pointed out their tiny features on the screen. Moving day was bittersweet. I was leaving behind the apartment where Siwoo and I had built our life together, where we'd laughed and loved and planned our future. But I was also stepping into something new, something that felt stable even though it was terrifying. Unwoo insisted on doing most of the heavy lifting, not wanting me to strain myself. I watched him carry boxes and assemble furniture, and I felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost knocked me over. This man who owed me nothing was giving me everything. 3 weeks before my due date, I went into early labor. It was the middle of the night, and the pain woke me from a fitful sleep. I stumbled to Unwoo's room, gripping the doorframe as another contraction hit. "Unwoo," I gasped, "it's time." He was up instantly, moving with calm efficiency even though I could see the panic in his eyes. He grabbed the hospital bag we'd packed weeks ago, helped me to the car, and drove through the empty streets while I breathed through contractions and tried not to scream. The labor was long and difficult. Twins are, the doctor told me. Unwoo stayed by my side the entire time, letting me squeeze his hand until I thought I might break his fingers. He whispered encouragement, wiped my forehead, and never once complained or showed anything but complete support. When my first son was born, tiny and wailing and perfect, I burst into tears. Then came his brother, just as small and loud and beautiful. The nurses cleaned them up and placed them both on my chest, and I looked down at these 2 miracles and felt love so overwhelming I thought my heart might explode. "They're perfect," Unwoo whispered, his own eyes wet with tears. "Ha-jun, they're absolutely perfect." I named them Se-yun and Son-yu. Se-yun had Siwoo's eyes, I noticed with a pang.
Unwoo had my nose. They were both absolutely beautiful, and they were mine. Mine and nobody else's. A nurse came in later with paperwork. "We need to fill out the birth certificates. Who's the father?" I looked at Unwoo, then back at the nurse. Just put my name for now. It's complicated." After we brought the babies home, reality set in fast. Twins are hard work. Double the feedings, double the diaper changes, double the sleepless nights. I was exhausted constantly, my body still recovering from childbirth while trying to care for two demanding infants. But Unwoo was incredible. He took night shifts so I could sleep. He learned to change diapers and make bottles. He walked the floor with a crying baby so I could tend to the other one. We became a team moving in synchronized rhythm to meet the needs of two tiny humans who depended on us completely. One night, about 2 months after the boys were born, I was feeding Unwoo while Unwoo burped Se-yun. We were both exhausted, covered in spit up, probably smelling pretty bad, and I caught Unwoo's eye across the room. We both started laughing, probably from sleep deprivation, but also from the sheer absurdity and beauty of the situation. "We make a good team," I said softly. Unwoo smiled at me, and there was something in that smile that made my heart skip. "Yeah, we really do." And for the first time since Siwoo had left, I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt hope.
5 years changed everything. I'm not the same person I was that terrible night when Siwoo walked out of my life. That Ha-jun was broken, insecure, convinced he wasn't enough. But this Ha-jun, the one I became through sheer necessity and determination, is stronger than I ever imagined I could be. Se-jun and Siwoo just turned 5 years old last month, and watching them blow out their birthday candles, I felt a surge of pride so intense it almost hurt. These two energetic, curious, loving boys are my entire world. Se-jun is the thoughtful one, always asking deep questions about how things work and why the sky is blue. Unwoo is my little performer, constantly singing songs and making up elaborate stories. They're best friends and worst enemies in the way only twins can be, fighting 1 minute and inseparable the next. After I lost my job at the advertising company, I struggled for months to figure out what to do. Traditional employment seemed impossible with 2 infants who needed constant care and no money for childcare. So I taught myself web design through free online courses, staying up late after the boys went to sleep, slowly building a portfolio while Unwoo covered most of our expenses. It was humbling, being so dependent on someone else. I contributed what I could from small freelance projects, but Unwoo never made me feel like a burden. He worked as an accountant at a stable firm, and he always said we're a family, and families help each other. Gradually, my web design business started growing. I got better clients, charged higher rates, and built a reputation for quality work and reliability. Now I make almost as much as Unwoo does, working from our apartment while the boys are at kindergarten. It's not the glamorous career I once imagined, but it's mine, and I built it from nothing. Unwoo has been there for literally everything. First steps, first words, first days of school, every milestone and every crisis. The boys call him Uncle Woo, but sometimes they slip and call him Appa, which is father in Korean. The first time Se-jun did that, I saw Unwoo's eyes fill with tears, even though he tried to hide it. We've built a life together that feels comfortable and safe, but not in the way Siwoo meant those words as insults. It's comfortable like coming home after a long day. It's safe like knowing someone will catch you if you fall. It's exactly what I needed, even though it took me a long time to realize it. The shift in my feelings for Unwoo happened so gradually I almost didn't notice it. One day I looked up from my laptop to see him sitting on the floor with the boys, building an elaborate castle out of blocks, and my heart did this strange flip in my chest. He was so patient with them, so gentle and kind, and I thought, how did I never see him before?
It had been 5 years since Siwoo left, and I thought I'd buried all those feelings deep enough that they couldn't hurt me anymore. I never talked about him with the boys. When they asked about their father, which they started doing around age 4, I told them a simplified version of the truth. Their father and I didn't work out, but they were very much wanted and loved. Senwoo, being more emotionally intuitive, once asked me, "Are you sad we don't have a daddy like the other kids?" It broke my heart. "You have Uncle Woo," I said, pulling him close, "and you have me. Some families look different, but that doesn't make them less special." But Unwoo heard that conversation. That night, after the boys were asleep, he sat down next to me on the couch. We'd fallen into a routine of watching television together after bedtime, sharing a bowl of popcorn and decompressing from the chaos of the day. "Ha-jun, can I talk to you about something?" he asked, his voice nervous in a way that immediately put me on alert. "Of course. What's wrong?" He took a deep breath, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. "I heard what Senwoo asked you today, about not having a father, and I need to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago." He paused, gathering courage. "I've been in love with you since we were 15 years old." I stared at him, completely frozen. "What?" "I know this is terrible timing, and I'm not trying to pressure you or make things weird, but I can't keep pretending anymore."
I've loved you for half my life, Ha-jun. I watched you fall for Siwoo and it killed me, but I wanted you to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. When he left you, I was furious because I knew what he was throwing away. And these past 5 years, living with you, helping raise the boys, it's been the happiest time of my life, even though I know we're just friends, but I'm tired of hiding how I feel. My mind was reeling, replaying every moment of the past 5 years through this new lens. All the little things I'd written off as friendship, the way he always made sure I ate when I was stressed, how he knew my coffee order perfectly, the gentle way he tucked my hair behind my ear when I was working, how he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I whispered. "Because you needed a friend, not another complication. You were pregnant and scared and heartbroken, and the last thing you needed was me adding pressure. I wanted to be what you needed me to be, and that was a friend. But Ha-jun, I can't anymore. I love you, and I love those boys like they're my own sons, and I need you to know that. Even if you don't feel the same way, even if this ruins everything, I need you to know." I realized I was crying. I don't know what to say. I'm scared. Siwoo destroyed me. I trusted him completely, and he left me like I was nothing. How do I trust someone again after that? He reached out and gently wiped away my tears. "I'm not Siwoo. I've had 5 years to prove that to you. 5 years of showing up every single day. I'm not going anywhere, Ha-jun. Whether you love me back or not, I'm not leaving you or those boys. You're stuck with me." Something inside me cracked open then, some wall I'd built around my heart to protect myself. "I think I've been falling in love with you too," I admitted quietly. "I was just too scared to acknowledge it, too afraid it would mess up what we have. But Unwoo, you've been more of a father to my sons than Siwoo ever could have been. You've been more of a partner to me than he ever was. And I do love you. I think I have for a while now." The smile that spread across his face was like watching the sun rise. "Really?" I nodded, and then suddenly we were kissing, and it felt like everything in my life finally clicked into place. It wasn't fireworks or dramatic music like in movies. It was warm and gentle and right, like coming home after being lost for a long time. We took things slowly after that. We'd been living as a family for 5 years already, so in many ways nothing changed. But in other ways, everything changed. We held hands while watching television,
We kissed goodnight. We talked about a future together that included both of us intentionally, not just circumstantially. The boys noticed the shift immediately. Kids always do. One morning at breakfast, Ha-jun looked at us suspiciously. "Why was Uncle Woo in your room, Appa? He has his own room." Unwoo and I exchanged glances. We'd discussed how to handle this conversation, but it was still nerve-wracking. "Because Uncle Woo and I are together now," I explained carefully. "Like how some of your friends have a mommy and daddy, you have two Appas." Seon-woo's eyes got huge. "Does this mean Uncle Woo is our daddy now?" Unwoo knelt down to their level. "I'm not trying to replace anyone, but I love you both very much, and I love your Appa. If you want to call me Appa too, I would be honored, but you can keep calling me Uncle Woo if that feels better, okay?" Ha-jun, always the analytical one, thought about this seriously. "Can we have two Appas and no mommy?" I laughed. "Yes, sweetheart, families come in all shapes and sizes." Within a week, they were both calling him Appa Woo. My heart melted every single time. Life fell into a beautiful new rhythm. Unwoo proposed to me 6 months later in the most unromantic, perfect way possible. We were cleaning up after dinner, the boys were playing in the living room, and he just turned to me while holding a dish rag and said, "We should get married." I laughed. "Is that a proposal? Do you want it to be?" He was smiling, but I could see he was serious. "Yes," I said simply. "Yes, I want to marry you." We took a small ceremony at City Hall with just a few close friends. The boys were our ring bearers, dressed in matching suits, and they took the job incredibly seriously. When the officiant declared us married, Ha-jun loudly announced, "Now we're a real family," and everyone laughed. I never thought I'd be this happy again. CU had made me believe I wasn't enough, that I was too ordinary to be loved. But Unwoo loved me precisely because of who I was, not in spite of it. He loved my ordinariness, my quiet strength, my dedication to our children. He saw value in all the things CU had dismissed. Then, one day, my carefully rebuilt peace was shattered. I was working in my home office when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up.
"Hello? Ha-jun, it's Siwoo." My blood turned to ice. I hadn't heard his voice in 5 years, but I recognized it immediately. "How did you get this number?" "I had to do some digging. Listen, I know this is unexpected, but I really need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere?" "No," I said flatly. "I have nothing to say to you." "Please, Ha-jun, just coffee, 30 minutes. I need to explain some things, and I need to apologize properly. You deserve that much." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was some lingering piece of the person I used to be who had loved him. We arranged to meet at a cafe far from my neighborhood, somewhere the boys would never accidentally see us. When I walked into that cafe and saw Siwoo sitting at a corner table, my first thought was how much older he looked. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, and he'd lost weight. He was still handsome, but there was a weariness to him that was new. He stood when he saw me, and I noticed his clothes weren't as expensive as they used to be. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. I sat down across from him without a word, my expression carefully neutral. I'd practiced this meeting in my head during the drive over, reminding myself that I was strong now, that he couldn't hurt me anymore. "You look good. Happy." "I am happy," I replied coolly. "What do you want, Siwoo?" He flinched at my tone. "I wanted to apologize, to explain. Do-yun and I, that ended badly, really badly. He was using me the whole time, Ha-jun, for my money, my connections, my camera equipment. When someone wealthier came along, he dropped me without a second thought.
He took everything, my savings, my expensive gear, even my dignity. I lost my photography studio before it even got off the ground. I had to declare bankruptcy. I felt a small, petty satisfaction at hearing this, which probably made me a terrible person. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm not sure why you're telling me this. Because I realized what I threw away. You were real, Ha-jun. What we had was real. Do-yun was all surface, all show. Being with him was like being in a beautiful photograph, stunning to look at, but empty. I made the worst mistake of my life when I left you. I took a sip of my coffee, letting his words hang in the air. You did, I agreed simply. You made a terrible mistake. You chose someone pretty and exciting over someone who actually loved you, and you hurt me in ways I'm still recovering from. But Siwoo, that's your burden to carry, not mine. I've moved on. Have you? He leaned forward, hope flickering in his eyes. Ha-jun, I still love you. I know I don't deserve another chance, but what if we could start over? What if... I held up my hand to stop him. I'm married, Siwoo. The hope died instantly. Married? Yes, to someone who has been by my side through everything, someone who values me exactly as I am, someone who would never leave me for a prettier face. I pulled out my phone and showed him a recent family photo. Me, Unwoo, and the boys at the beach. This is my family now. Siwoo stared at the photo, and I watched his face change as he really looked at the boys. The color drained from his cheeks. Ha-jun, those boys, they look like... They're 5, I said evenly, confirming what he was obviously thinking. Twins, born about 7 months after you left. His hand started shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you... Oh my God, Ha-jun, I have sons together? We have sons together and you never told me? I felt a flare of anger then, hot and righteous. You left me, Siwoo. You walked out the door because I wasn't exciting enough for you. I was standing in that kitchen with a pregnancy test in my pocket, ready to tell you, and you chose that exact moment to tell me I wasn't good enough. So no, I didn't tell you. I didn't owe you that information after what you did. But they're my children. His voice was rising, drawing attention from other cafe patrons. Biologically, yes, but you're not their father. Unwoo is their father. He was there for every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night, every first word and first step. He changed diapers and sang lullabies and held me when I cried because I was terrified of doing this alone. You have no right to claim them now. Siwoo was crying openly now, tears streaming down his face. Please, Ha-jun, please let me meet them. Let me be part of their lives. I'll do anything. I know I messed up, but they deserve to know their biological father, don't they? I stood up, gathering my things. What they deserve is stability and love, which they already have. I'm not going to disrupt their lives because you suddenly decided you want to play daddy. You made your choice 5 years ago. Now you get to live with it.
Ha-jun, please. Goodbye, Siwoo. I hope you find what you're looking for, but you won't find it with me or my family. I walked out of that cafe without looking back, and I felt lighter somehow. Facing him, standing up to him, telling him exactly how I felt. It was cathartic in a way I hadn't expected. The man I'd loved so desperately had no power over me anymore. When I got home, Unwoo was in the kitchen starting dinner while the boys played. He took one look at my face and knew something had happened. Are you okay? I wrapped my arms around him from behind and rested my head against his back. Siwoo found my number. We met for coffee. He knows about the boys. Unwoo tensed. And I told him exactly where he could go with his sudden desire to be a father. He has no claim to them or to me. You're their appa. You're my husband. He's just a mistake I made a long time ago. Unwoo turned around in my arms and kissed my forehead. Are you sure you're okay? That must have been difficult. It was, but it was also freeing. I realized I don't love him anymore. I don't even miss who he was. I've healed, Inu. Finally. Completely healed. That night, after the boys were asleep, Inu and I talked seriously about what Siwoo's reappearance might mean. We discussed the possibility that he might try to claim parental rights, though without his name on the birth certificates and no history of involvement, any lawyer would tell him he had almost no case. "What if he keeps trying to contact you?" Inu asked. "Then I'll keep saying no. Those boys are ours, not his. He doesn't get to waltz back in after 5 years and claim them just because his life didn't turn out how he planned." As it turned out, Siwoo did try to contact me several more times over the following weeks. Calls, texts, even a letter sent to my business address. Each time, I refused to engage. I'd said everything I needed to say in that cafe, and I had nothing more to give him. The final message he sent said simply, "I understand. I'll respect your wishes, but please tell them someday that their father did love them, even if I never got the chance to show it." I deleted the message and blocked his number. Maybe someday, when Ha-jun and Unwoo were older and could understand the complexity of the situation, I'd tell them the full truth about their biological father, but that was a bridge we'd cross when we came to it. For now, they were happy and secure and loved, and that was all that mattered.
2 more years slipped by in the comfortable rhythm of family life, and I honestly thought the Siwoo chapter of my life was permanently closed. The boys were 7 now, thriving in school and blissfully unaware of the complicated history surrounding their existence. Life was good. Better than good, actually. My web design business had grown beyond anything I'd imagined possible during those dark early days after Siwoo left. What started as desperate freelancing to make ends meet had evolved into a legitimate company with several regular clients and a steady stream of new projects. I'd recently hired a part-time assistant to help manage the workload, which felt surreal and wonderful. Unwoo and I had even started saving for a down payment on a house with a real yard where the boys could play. Then came the email that changed everything. "Dear Mr. Ha-jun, we at Phoenix Media Group have been impressed with your portfolio and would like to discuss a major website redesign project. Would you be available for a meeting at our headquarters next Tuesday?" Phoenix Media Group was huge, one of the largest media companies in Seoul, with magazines, photography studios, and digital platforms. Landing them as a client would be a game changer for my business. I immediately responded yes, my heart racing with excitement and nerves. The night before the meeting, I laid out my best suit, a tailored navy ensemble that Unwoo had convinced me to buy for important occasions. "You look like a successful businessman," he said approvingly, adjusting my tie. "They'd be crazy not to hire you." "What if I mess this up?" I asked, suddenly nervous. He kissed me gently. "You won't. You're talented and professional, and they already want to work with you. Just be yourself." The next morning, I took the subway to Phoenix Media Group's gleaming headquarters in the business district. The building was all glass and steel, impossibly modern and intimidating. I checked in at reception, and a friendly assistant led me to a conference room on the 15th floor. "Mr. Kim will be joining you shortly, along with the creative team lead," she said, gesturing for me to take a seat at the massive table. I was reviewing my presentation notes when the door opened. I looked up with a professional smile, ready to make a good impression, and then froze completely. Siwoo stood in the doorway. He looked as shocked as I felt, his face going pale. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. He looked different than he had 2 years ago at that cafe, more put together, though still not quite the confident person he'd been when we were together. "Ha-jun," he said quietly. Before I could respond, another man entered behind Siwoo, Mr. Kim, presumably, the executive who'd emailed me. He was in his 50s, all business efficiency. "Ah, wonderful, you're both here. Mr. Ha-jun, this is Siwoo, our photography team lead. Siwoo, this is Ha-jun, the web designer I was telling you about. You'll be working closely together on this project. I found my voice somehow. I see. It's nice to meet you, I said, extending my hand with professional courtesy that felt like swallowing glass. Siwoo shook it, his hand trembling slightly. Likewise. The meeting proceeded with excruciating awkwardness, at least from my perspective. Mr. Kim outlined the project, a complete overhaul of their photography magazine's website, integrating it with their portfolio system and creating a more dynamic user experience. It was exactly the kind of challenging, high-profile project I'd been hoping for. Siwoo and I would need to collaborate extensively, Mr. Kim explained. The photography content was the heart of the website, so visual design and functionality needed to work in perfect harmony. We'd be expected to have regular meetings, share resources, coordinate timelines. I wanted to scream. Of all the companies in Seoul, of all the possible team leads, it had to be Siwoo. But I kept my professional mask firmly in place, took detailed notes, asked intelligent questions, and acted like this was just another client meeting. When it finally ended, Mr. Kim shook my hand enthusiastically. We're excited to work with you, Mr. Ha-jun. Siwoo will be your main point of contact. He'll send you the creative brief by end of week. I look forward to it, I lied smoothly. As Mr. Kim left, Siwoo and I were alone in the conference room. The silence was deafening. Ha-jun, I had no idea you were the designer they hired, he said quickly. If I'd known, I don't know what I would have done, but I didn't set this up. You have to believe that.
I gathered my materials calmly. It's fine. This is a professional engagement. We can keep it professional, can't we? Of course, yes, absolutely. He looked relieved and disappointed at the same time. But Ha-jun, about what we discussed before. There's nothing to discuss, I cut him off firmly. You're a colleague now, nothing more. Please send me that creative brief by Friday. I walked out without waiting for a response. That evening, I told Unwoo everything. He was angry at first, suggesting I turn down the project, but I refused. I worked too hard to build this business to let Siwoo scare me away from the best opportunity I've ever had. I can handle working with him. It's just business. Over the following weeks, Siwoo and I fell into a strange professional rhythm. We exchanged emails about layout options and image galleries. We had video calls to discuss navigation flow and portfolio presentations. We were polite, efficient, and completely impersonal. But I could tell it was killing him. During our meetings, I'd catch him staring at me when he thought I wasn't looking. Once, when I was sharing my screen to show him a design mock-up, I noticed his computer background was still a photo of one of his photographs, one he'd taken of me years ago, laughing at something off camera. You should probably change that, I said coolly, pointing it out. Very unprofessional to have personal photos as your work background. He changed it immediately, looking mortified. The turning point came about 6 weeks into the project. We had to meet in person at Phoenix Media Group to review the beta site with the executive team. I arrived early and was waiting in a small meeting room when Siwoo came in carrying 2 coffees. I remembered how you like it, he said, offering me one. Extra cream, 1 sugar. I accepted it because refusing would have been awkward, but I didn't thank him. We sat in uncomfortable silence, and finally Siwoo couldn't take it anymore. How are the boys? He asked quietly. They're fine. Thriving, actually. Sir Jun wants to be a scientist, and Unwoo is obsessed with music. They're smart, funny, kind kids. Everything you'd hope for. Do they ever ask about me? About their biological father? I looked at him levelly. Sometimes we've told them age-appropriate truths that their biological father and I didn't work out, but they were wanted and loved. They have 2 parents who adore them. That's all they need to know right now. Siwoo's eyes were filling with tears. I think about them all the time. I see kids their age and wonder if they look like that, if they act like that. I threw away everything, Ha-jun. My relationship with you, the chance to know my own children, my integrity. For what?
For Do-hyun, who used me and threw me away the second someone better came along? The karma is almost funny, except it's my life. Part of me felt satisfaction hearing this. The part of me that Siwoo had hurt so badly wanted him to suffer, wanted him to understand what he'd lost. But another part of me, the part that had healed and grown and learned to love again, just felt sad for him. What happened to you was painful, I'm sure, but Siwoo, you can't put that on me or my family. You made choices. Choices have consequences. You're living with yours, and I'm living with mine. The difference is, my consequences ended up being beautiful. Before he could respond, the executive team arrived for our presentation. I slipped back into professional mode, presenting the website design with confidence and expertise. The executives loved it, asked for only minor changes, and approved the project to move forward to final development. As we were packing up afterwards, Mr. Kim pulled me aside. I have to say, Ha-jun, you've exceeded our expectations. We're planning a major expansion of our digital presence next year, and we'd like you to be our primary design partner. Would you be interested in a long-term contract? My business head was screaming yes, but I hesitated. Can I ask who I'd be working with most closely? Oh, various team leads, depending on the project, but Siwoo would remain your main photography division contact. Is that a problem? I looked across the room at Siwoo, who was watching this conversation nervously, and then I thought about my boys, my husband, my business, the life I'd built from the ashes of heartbreak. Siwoo didn't have the power to take any of that away from me. No problem at all, I said confidently. I'd be honored to continue working with Phoenix Media Group. Over the next several months, our professional relationships settled into something almost comfortable. Siwoo stopped trying to insert personal conversations into our work meetings. He was competent, creative, and respectful of boundaries. Sometimes I'd see flashes of the person I'd once loved, his eye for composition, his perfectionist attention to detail. But those moments didn't hurt anymore. They were just observations. One day, I was at a cafe near my apartment working on a client project when someone slid into the seat across from me. I looked up, ready to politely tell the stranger this seat was taken, and found myself facing Do-hyun.
I recognized him immediately from all those social media photos that had tortured me years ago. He was still beautiful, but there was a hardness to him now, a desperation around the edges. His clothes were expensive, but not as expensive as they used to be. "You're Ha-jun, aren't you? Siwoo's ex?" "Yes," I replied carefully. "And you're Do-hyun." "I saw you leaving Phoenix Media Group last week. I was there meeting with a magazine editor, trying to get modeling work. It's been harder lately." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out youth and beauty have an expiration date in my industry. Who knew?" I wasn't sure what he wanted from me. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you, though?" He leaned back, studying me. "Siwoo talks about you sometimes. When he's had too much to drink at industry events, your name comes up. I had something real with Ha-jun. I threw it away for nothing." Do-hyun's smile was cruel. "I wanted to see what was so special about you. What did you have that I didn't?" I closed my laptop slowly. I loved him genuinely, not for what he could give me or how he could boost my career. I loved him for who he was. That's the difference. Do-hyun's facade cracked a little. "You think I didn't love him? Maybe I didn't at first, but later, when things got serious, I could have loved him. But he was always comparing me to you, always finding me lacking somehow. Even when he was with me, he was thinking about you." "Then you both got exactly what you deserved from each other. A relationship built on wrong reasons was never going to work." "But Do-hyun, why are you telling me this?" He stood up abruptly. "I don't know. Maybe I wanted to apologize. Maybe I wanted to see if you'd gloat. You won, Ha-jun. You got the happy ending. Congratulations." He walked away before I could respond. I sat there for a long time processing that strange encounter. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I'd lost and grieved and rebuilt and healed.
That wasn't winning, that was surviving. That night, I told Unwoo about both encounters, Do-hyun's bitterness and Si-woo's regrets. Unwoo listened carefully, then pulled me close. "Do you still have feelings for him?" he asked, not accusatory, just genuinely curious. I thought about it honestly. No, I feel neutral about him now. Maybe a little sad for him, the way you'd feel sad for anyone who made terrible choices and has to live with them. But I don't love him, and I don't hate him anymore either. He's just someone I used to know. "That's good," Unwoo said, kissing my temple. "That's healthy." The final chapter of the Si-woo saga came unexpectedly on a random Thursday. Unwoo and I were at the boys' school for a parent-teacher conference when my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Si-woo's work email, marked personal. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. Inside was a long letter and an attached bank transfer receipt for a substantial amount of money. The letter read, "Ha-jun, I know you told me to stay away, and I've respected that, but I can't live with myself without doing this one thing. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a relationship with the boys. I'm not asking for anything at all. This money is for Seo-jun and Sanwoo's education fund. It's not charity or guilt money. It's the child support I should have been paying for 7 years. I calculated what I would have contributed if I'd known about them from the beginning. I know it doesn't make up for my absence, but it's all I have to offer. You don't need to respond to this email. You don't owe me anything. I just needed to do one right thing. Tell them, someday, when they're old enough to understand, that their biological father thought about them and wanted to help in the only way he could. Si-woo." I showed it to Unwoo. We looked at the transfer amount. It was significant, enough to pay for college for both boys with money left over. "What do you want to do?" Unwoo asked. I thought about it carefully. Pride wanted me to refuse, to send it back, to tell Si-woo to keep his guilty conscience money. But practicality and parental responsibility won out. This money could genuinely help our sons' futures. "I'm going to accept it," I said finally, "not for Si-woo's sake, but for the boys. He's right, it is what he should have been paying all along. We'll put it in an education fund and never touch it for anything else." I wrote back a brief response. "The money has been received and will be used solely for the boys' educational expenses. Thank you for taking this responsibility seriously, even belatedly. This doesn't change anything between us, but I acknowledge the gesture. Ha-jun." His response came minutes later. "I understand. Thank you for accepting it. I wish you and your family all the happiness in the world. You deserve it." And that was it, the last communication I ever had with Si-woo. I heard through industry contacts that he eventually left Phoenix Media Group and Seoul altogether, taking a job at a smaller photography studio in Busan. Some mutual acquaintances said he'd become quieter, more serious, like he'd finally grown up. I didn't follow his life after that. I had my own life to live, and it was a beautiful one. The boys grew and thrived. Seo-jun did become fascinated with science, winning awards at school science fairs. Sanwoo discovered he had a real talent for music, learning piano and singing in the school choir. They were happy, well-adjusted kids who knew they were loved completely.
My business continued to expand. I hired 3 full-time employees and moved into an actual office space. We took on bigger clients, more complex projects, and I finally felt like I'd achieved the professional success I'd always dreamed of, on my own terms, through my own hard work. Unwoo and I bought that house we'd been saving for, a modest but lovely place, with a yard where the boys could play and a room I converted into a proper home office. We celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner, while the boys spent the night at Unwoo's parents' house. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" I asked him over dessert. He smiled. "I imagined being with you from the time I was 15. The details changed, but the dream was always you."
even when I was pregnant with another man's children and completely broken? Especially then. That's when you needed me most. And Ha-jun, those boys are ours. Biology doesn't determine family. Love does. Sometimes, very rarely, the boys would ask about their biological father. As they got older and understood more about how families worked, they became more curious. We always answered honestly, but age-appropriately. On their 10th birthday, So-jun asked directly, "Why did our biological father leave?" Unwoo and I exchanged glances. "He made a mistake," I said carefully. "He thought he wanted something else, something he believed was better. By the time he realized what he'd given up, it was too late. People make mistakes, even big ones." "Do you hate him?" So-jun asked. "No," I said, and I realized it was completely true. I don't hate him. I'm actually grateful to him in a strange way. If he hadn't left, I wouldn't have the life I have now. I wouldn't be married to Unwoo. You two would be different people. Everything would be different. So no, I don't hate him. I just don't think about him much anymore." "Will we ever meet him?" So-jun asked. "Maybe someday, if you want to, and if circumstances allow. That's a decision you can make when you're older and can understand all the complexities. But you should know that he did think about you. He wanted to be part of your lives, but it was complicated." The boys seemed satisfied with that answer for now. As they got older, we'd tell them more. We'd show them the education fund Siwoo had set up. We'd let them decide if they wanted contact. But that was years away still. Looking back on everything, the heartbreak, the struggle, the healing, the revenge that came simply from living well, I realized that my life hadn't turned out anything like I'd planned when I was 25 and in love with Siwoo. It had turned out better. Siwoo had taught me what I didn't want in a relationship. He'd shown me that pretty words and exciting promises meant nothing without consistent action and genuine commitment. He'd broken me, yes, but in breaking me, he'd also freed me to become someone stronger. Unwoo had taught me what real love looked like. Not fireworks and passion and dramatic gestures, but steady presence and quiet support and choosing each other every single day. He'd shown me that being someone's first choice, their only choice, was infinitely better than being someone's backup plan. And my boys, my beautiful sons, had taught me that love multiplies rather than divides, that families are built through dedication, not just biology, that every ending is also a beginning if you're brave enough to start over. The best revenge, I learned, isn't making your ex suffer. It's not proving them wrong or showing them what they lost. The best revenge is healing completely and building a life so fulfilling that your ex becomes irrelevant. It's being genuinely happy in a way that has nothing to do with them. Siwoo had replaced me with someone prettier, thinking that was an upgrade, but he downgraded in every way that mattered. And by the time he realized it, I'd already moved on to something infinitely better. A love that was real, a family that was mine, and a future that was bright. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it's the sweetest kind there is. If you enjoyed this story of heartbreak, healing, and finding true love where you least expected it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional romance stories. What do you think? Did Ha-jun make the right choice in not telling Siwoo about the twins? Should people get second chances after breaking someone's heart? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear what happens when the boys finally meet their biological father, let me know and I'll create a follow-up story. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss our next upload. Thank you for listening, and remember, the right person will choose you every single day, in every single way. Until next time.